You're cutting out. Can you repeat that? Go for production. Go for production. I said go for production. Production.
That's right. You're listening to a podcast about TV and film production. Join us as we converse with industry leaders and gain insight into their strategies, their systems, and best practices in bringing a script to life. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome your host, Brendan Riley.
Welcome to another episode of Go for Production, where it's my job to deconstruct and demystify the production process in both film and television. We'll talk about strategies, systems, and tools the pros use so you can be inspired to move forward in your filmmaking career. Today's guest is Chris Castaldi. Chris graduated UCLA with a bachelor's in economics and emphasis in film. He started out in the film world as a production assistant and went on to work as a second AD, first AD, and is currently working in a producer capacity at Joe Roth's Film. Some of Chris's credits include Avengers Endgame, Avengers Infinity War, Iron Man 1 and 2, Pirates of the Caribbean, Dead Man Tell No Tales, Jurassic World, Tomorrowland, Pain and Gain, The Bourne Legacy, Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol. And those are just a few of the titles Chris has worked on. Chris, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
So those titles that I mentioned, they're quite large films, quite big movies. I mean, you just worked on the largest movie, right?
Yes.
Ever made.
Ever made, and hopefully in another month or so it'll be the highest box office that has ever occurred.
That's quite an accomplishment. You know, in this hour that we're talking, hopefully we'll touch on that movie. But I want to go back to when you first started out. When did you get this idea that, hey, you're going to pursue movies, you're going to pursue telling stories? When did that come about?
Well, I was actually a student at UCLA. I tried a few things in my freshman and sophomore year. I tried pre-med, I tried pre-law, and nothing really took. My third year, I decided to skip out on some studying in June. We were on trimester, so our finals were very late. And I skipped out and decided to go see a movie in the middle of the day. It was Jurassic Park, the original Jurassic Park by Spielberg. And I thought not only was the movie absolutely incredible at the time, but it was also the scariest thing and most fascinating thing that I'd seen on a big screen. And to see a movie opening day in Westwood, it's loud and the fans are very, very enthusiastic. And it just changed the way I looked at things. And I immediately, the following quarter, I decided to get into film. At that time, it was too late to enter the film school itself. I was given the advice to become an economics major and take film classes and make that my emphasis. So that's what I did, and I pursued it from there.
Do you think your economics study helped you in your film journey?
I think it's helping me more. The higher you get and the further you get along in your career, it absolutely does, because now I'm getting into producing and dealing with budgets and studios and that type of thing. The economics degree is quite important, and I would probably say that it's more important than the film background that I had. Most of my film learning took place on set. You know,
in addition to studying film in school, I studied philosophy, and I always felt that helped me sometimes more than my film study.
Yeah.
You know, I studied aesthetics as a really cool class. You take this idea of film in school and you're thinking about that. Did you just think about being an AD right off the bat, or did it take a while to discover that as well?
Just like everyone else, I'm like, I want to be a director. I want to jump straight to the top. I don't know how I'm going to do it, but I know that's what I want. And I graduated college, and just like most college students, had absolutely no idea, no path, no assistance, no direction on how to pursue my career. And I started working in restaurants. So that's my humble beginnings. Was in one restaurant I was a server, and in another restaurant I hadn't even made it to serving yet. I was working on the host stand before you got promoted to server. So there you go.
But where's the connection to the AD? How did you go from server to first AD of Avengers Endgame?
Well, the serving thing. Okay, so I have kind of a what I think is a Hollywood story, and that is I was working at Gladstone's in Malibu on the beach,
Right.
And I was the host stand, and when you start in Gladstone's, the first 3 months you have to be a host. You cannot even serve. So I was working on a Friday night, and I saw the list of reservations for Saturday morning, and it said Ron Howard party of 20. And so that immediately kind of piqued my interest. I pretended I was the manager of the restaurant. I called Imagine Films in Beverly Hills, and I asked for Ron's office, and I spoke to his assistant, Louisa, and I said, I'm just checking in from Gladstone, so anything I need to know about tomorrow. And it turns out that it was his twin daughters, Paige and Jocelyn. It was their 13th birthday. And I said, thank you very much. We'll see you tomorrow. I changed my shift immediately, so I had the opening morning shift. It was a breakfast party. And I put up all these balloons and menus with their names, and I just did everything I possibly could to, make a quick impression. And Ron came in with his family, his wife, his daughters.
Who Bryce Howard as well, right?
Bryce was with him, and I'll tell you an amendment to the story later, which is funny because I ended up working with Bryce closely. But came in, and I seated him in the section that I had pre-set up, and he was very, very happy for the effort and thanked the server, and the server referred back to me, and I went and joined him, and he said, have a seat. And I sat down and talked to him for over 20 minutes. And eventually it came around. He says, well, what do you want to do? And I said, I really want to get into film. And he said, could you get out of this job? And the quote that I said, and I will never forget it, so this is word for word. I said, Mr. Howard, I've been sitting talking to you for 20 minutes. I'm pretty sure I'm already out of this job. And so he reached over to his assistant, Louisa, and said, this is Louisa, and I'm shooting a movie called Ed TV, and why don't you start with us next week? And in the kind of Hollywood tradition, I went in the back, I quit and took off my shirt, threw it on the floor, and walked out the front door. And 2 days later, I was at Universal Studios working in his production office on Ed TV.
That's an amazing story.
It's cool.
It reminds you of the story about Steven Spielberg, how he snuck onto the lot.
Yes. Yes. The late, years and years later, I had the pleasure of working with Bryce on Jurassic World. And I said, I literally said, I have a funny story about your dad. And I mentioned it to her, and I said, I met him at Gladstone's, 15 years ago, and I went through the whole thing. And she's like, oh my God, I remember you. I was there. And it was a whole thing. And, she told her pops, and she said that Ron remembered, but, who knows? But it was really nice to come full circle.
I mean, what a cool director to work with.
He's amazing.
There's so many directors out there, but he's just such a nice guy too,
Yes.
I got to work with his dad.
He's tops. He's a family man.
Right.
It's like he's with Cheryl, and he has wonderful kids, and he makes very good, entertaining movies. He's solid in all aspects of filmmaking. He's a great person.
So this movie that just came out, I know we're one of the main reasons I want to do this podcast because I know it needed some help financially. I thought we might help get the word out because I think it only made like $2.7 billion worldwide
and counting.
And counting. So we don't know what it's going to be. We don't know what the number's going to be, when this comes out.
Well, everyone that listens to your podcast, please go see it again.
Please go see it.
2.8, and we want to get past Avatar.
That's what we're trying to do.
Yes.
We're trying to promote Avengers Endgame.
That's right.
Because nobody's seen it yet.
Yes.
So I wanted to spend a couple minutes doing a small case study on Avengers Endgame. And just try to unpack how somebody like yourself would set out to tackle this type of movie. And so I want to kind of ask a couple series of questions that are kind of specific to this film.
Sure.
And then we can kind of talk in broad strokes later about just the work that you do. So for this movie, how many days did it shoot?
We shot... Well, we did two films together.
Mm-hmm.
Originally, we were going to cross-board them and shoot them at the same time, but we did a back-to-back shoot with only a few weeks in between the shoots. So it was pretty much, if you string them all together, first unit-wise, we were over 200 days of shooting. Second unit-wise, at least another 100 100 days or so, and then we had splinter units. We had 2 sets of reshoots. So all in all, if you put all the units together and the reshoots, we were 350 days, maybe something like that. I also prepped the film for well over a year. So I was on Infinity War and Endgame for about 2.5 years.
So you're saying 350 days for both movies, or
for both movies? Yeah.
Wow. When you're prepping the movie, did you do the original schedule?
I did.
And did anybody before you say, "Hey, we need to get this to a certain number of days," or did you say?
No, actually, the folks at Marvel gave me the scripts and said, break it down and see what you think.
Mm-hmm.
So I give them my initial assessment, my reasons why I put things a certain way, and then they start coming back with, okay, well, budgetarily, here's what we need to get into, and we start to back into what has to be done. But the initial schedule, and this was without knowing what actors would be available when, is just a broad stroke. This covers both scripts. There were no limitations. They wanted to see what I thought of it before we got going.
And then, where did you shoot this film?
We shot mostly in Atlanta, Georgia, in Fayetteville at Pinewood. We did some shooting in Edinburgh, Scotland. We sent a first unit and a second unit there. We did some reshoots in Los Angeles, and we sent plate units all over the world. Iceland, the Atacama Desert in South America, to the Philippines, to Ethiopia, to you name it. There were plate units that went everywhere for the various worlds that you saw in the movie.
So a lot of things in this film, it requires stunts and VFX,
Yeah.
and there's scenes in this movie that have 20 A-list actors. It's
More.
like I tried to count them all.
More.
Like, how did you
Yeah.
get that many? How did their schedules all align? I mean, was that really a challenge?
There were the top actors, and I don't mean top talent wise. I mean the ones that have their own franchises.
Mm-hmm.
Iron Man, Thor, Captain America, Black Widow, those type of folks. We had them run a show, so I had access to them pretty much whenever we needed them over the course of shooting. Most of the other actors were on cameo deals, so we had to work around their availability. Actors like Benedict Cumberbatch and Chris Pratt and some of the bigger names there. That required a lot of coordination with their people.
Mm-hmm.
But in the end, surprisingly, you get limitations pretty much up front. It's Chris Pratt is doing Jurassic World 2 from July to August, and
right.
then he's available. So it's almost like a puzzle. You get a number of pieces. You simply reach out to all of them and find out what the availabilities are, and then you start piecing them together the best you can.
Because when you're an actor that big, your year is almost booked up, right? I mean, in terms of
it's not just filming either. It's publicity and photo shoots and interviews and family vacations. It just seems like they don't stop. There are people that simply, it doesn't seem like they have 10 minutes to themselves.
So when you're at your computer, you're creating this schedule. Mm-hmm. Are you using Movie Magic?
I am.
Okay. Do you ever use Synchronize? We
use Synchronize. The production office uses Synchronize when they want to pass things out to the crew. Great. So it's encrypted and you can't print it.
So you're breaking down this schedule. I mean, your knowledge of VFX and stunts has to be pretty intense to
at this point, yeah,
to
yeah.
to figure this out, right?
Yeah.
So when you're reading the script, does it come naturally to you that, I know this is a VFX plate shot, or I know this is a stunt, a
it
cable
does now.
pull?
It didn't. I mean, it didn't for years, but it absolutely does now. It's some of you can imagine. You've seen the films. Some of the sequences are so wild and so heavy stunts and so heavy with visual effects that it's just a natural thing now to do the human elements that we need, organize whatever plates we're going to need, a separate stunt unit. It breaks down into probably 5 or 6 pieces, and then we just see how close we can get them all together and try to do it at once.
Now, even though you have the knowledge of stunts and VFX, how closely are you working with a stunt coordinator and a VFX producer to create this schedule?
As close as the two of us are sitting right now.
You're like, what about this, right?
No, I mean, it's we have previs, so it's like we have that now with the Avengers movies. Joe and Anthony Russo are two of the most amazing people I've ever met. The previs and the storyboards are basically a guide, you know, so at least I can see that the tone of the scene, how long it's going to be. And then the stunt department does their own separate stunt viz, okay, which is, that's evolved over the last 5-6 years, where they do their fighting, they record it, they edit it, they put in After Effects, they put in sound effects. So it's like their own little mini stunt movie. You put that next to the previs, and you can pretty much get a feel for what you're going to do, and you combine them, and at least I know the human elements. Then I would sit with the visual effects team and what needs to be real, what needs to be a handoff, meaning if someone is flying, for instance, we'd have them jump off the ground, and then it's an immediate handoff into the visual effects world. So, and we just start talking about what's real, what needs to be shot, what elements need to be shot against a green screen, and so on and so forth. It's a very tedious shot. Action scenes take a very, very long time, not only to plan, but something that's a minute in the movie can take us 6 weeks to shoot, you know, so when it comes down to it.
So when you're creating that schedule, what would be your typical process to say, hey, I've got different passes that I'm going to do my initial pass, then what's the next step?
Well, the first pass is always what I think. I'm just sitting at the desk by myself. And so I just put all the elements down, and I put everything down that I think needs to be shot. And then it's a process of going to each department and confirming what that is, starting with the directors. Do you want this? Do you want that? Is there something not in the previs, or not in the boards, or not in the stunt viz that you want me to include? We put all that in. Like I said, then we start putting the stunt elements in. We start putting the visual effects elements in, and surprisingly, it comes together rather quickly.
Is the previs done before you start your schedule to help you with the schedule?
No. But as the schedule, when we start shooting, that's version A of the schedule, the white version of the schedule. By the time we're done shooting, I've probably released 20 schedules, 25 schedules, and I've probably done hundreds of them, 200-300 of them, versions of them. So if I put, just seeing the movie, for Infinity War, if I put 25 days of shooting on Vormir for the final fight with Thanos, by the time I get the previs, I will literally cut it up shot by shot so that I know this is 200 shots. We can do 25 shots a day, and I would up it and add time to it. I also break down all the storyboards and put them all on board. So on set itself, we have a full visualization of what we want to shoot.
So it's almost like you're like a commercial, breaking that up in a way, kind of.
Yeah, the difference in the commercial, you tend to the agency tends to give you the boards and say this is what we want to shoot.
Right.
It's much more organic and much more free flowing, and there's much more thought process that go into it. There's more interaction with the actors saying, "Why don't I try this?" The Russos are so great with actors to give them the space so that the scene evolves, not only in rehearsals but while we're actually shooting. So that's how it differs. Commercials tend to be very shoot this is what we want. I don't need any variations.
Right. In terms of when you're creating the schedule, what have you learned any tricks to make this efficient and or keep updating it?
You prioritize. You start with Tony Stark, and you basically make a schedule that caters to Robert Downey, and by that I just mean, put his dates together, and then you just start going down the pecking list. And no one wants to be number 12 on the list and hear that they work one Monday and then have 3 weeks off and work a Thursday, but those are the decisions that you have to make. So that's where it starts, is simple actor availability and prioritization. I mean, someone like Michael Douglas in the movie, he was probably 45 on the cast list, and this guy's a legend, but that's just the way it worked. Once you get the cast kind of lined up, then you get into the sets. What's available? What sets have to be converted and turned over? Because there's always changeovers with our different planets, and a bedroom in one scene 3 weeks later may be an office. So you have a lot of art department restrictions as well. So everything factors into it.
And then, what do you think to you is the most difficult part of the schedule process, or something that makes you want to pull your hair out?
Actors. They're great, and
they've got vacation.
I've been fortunate.
Right?
The thing is, life happens, and when you're on a movie for 2.5 years, or others, typically 9 months, you see everything. You see people, you see life, you see death, you see marriage, you see divorce, you see kids born. I mean, it's just life happens around you, and we have to be flexible, and if someone has a family issue, we have to deal with it. And, there are also times where actors would come and say, I know I'm only working 2 days for the next month, but I really want to do this other passion project. And they're asking to get out of it. And we try to figure that out. And we try to just be accommodating as we can, because people are saying this, people are paying to see them, not to see my schedule. So, but just the scheduling of actors, the keeping actors happy, that's the priority. But it's very difficult, especially in a film that size.
And do you have anybody kind of assisting, being the middleman for some of that? Like,
oh, I have a team. I have my staff was almost 20 full on some of the movies. My key second AD is my right hand, my absolute rock. Because once we start shooting, I'm on set full time. Mm-hmm. He's the one dealing with the actors' assistants, the actors' agents. He'll come to me with anything I need to know, and we'll solve the problems together. But he's the brain hub of the operation once we get shooting.
So you prepped this movie for almost a year, right?
Over a year.
Over a year. Wow. Talk to us about the prep process. Besides your scheduling, what are the other things that you're trying to figure out, trying to solve?
We certainly scout locations. In this case, it was Edinburgh, various locations around Atlanta. Once we get locations locked in, you start to get the rules of the road. One of the locations in Atlanta was attached to a federal courthouse. It was the second highest courthouse in all of Georgia. And we used a 4-block stretch, and they simply didn't want us there. And the movie before us was Fast and Furious 7, I believe, and they broke all the rules. So they wanted no part of us being there, but legally we had our permits. And so you're dealing with federal marshals and judges and that type of thing. And so well planned out, well scouted, directors meetings, creative meetings, scheduling meetings. It doesn't end. I mean, prep is on those movies were 15, 16 hours a day, and weekends you don't have off. It's, everyone else is off, but the ADs, we never shut our brain off until we physically wrap the movie. So,
and how closely are you working with the director, helping them prioritize what they need to do to visually, understand what's going to happen?
Yeah, we're side by side.
Right.
I mean, we're right. It's all the directors I work with have been very fortunate, with the exception of a couple, no names, but. Very collaborative, and the more information that they give me, I think everyone realizes the more we're all there to help them. And when they give me something, my job is also to let all the departments know. So if it's something very simple as I want someone to jump and an explosion go off, I'm talking to stunts, I'm talking to effects, I'm talking to set dressing. It's a dispersion. I'm like a big stage manager almost,
right?
That type of thing.
So when in the prep process, you have your team with you. What was interesting about building your team for this particular movie? I mean, I'm sure people you've already worked with to a certain degree. Were there any?
You need the best,
right?
You need the absolute best, and the good part about that is when you're doing a movie of this size, and the publicity ahead of this movie before I even started was already known. The movies were announced and people were already excited about them. So I felt like I can choose just about anybody, that there was a huge list of people that wanted to work on the movies. So I had 2 key second ADs, Jeff Okabayashi and Matt Haggerty, and they are simply 2 of the best. I've worked with Jeff. He goes by Jeff O. I've worked with Jeff O for 20 years. I was his PA a long time ago. Yeah.
What do you think makes him the best?
He's a cool customer, and by that I mean he never gets frazzled.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't raise his voice. He is Jeff I'm talking about now is hyper intelligent. He has the ability to anticipate problems. He has the ability to anticipate what I'm going to say and what I'm going to react. He knows what I need to know, and he knows what I don't need to know, and sometimes shielding me from a lot of the garbage. Like, it's important in its own right, but I can only deal with so much because I have a full set to run. So Jeff just spearheads all of that. He runs the base camp. He's the first person the actors see in the morning and the last person they see before they go home. despite all of it, we have so much to do as the day goes, but I still feel that my number one priority is to put happy actors in front of a director. And no matter 2,000 background, crazy sets, the biggest visual effects in the world, if an actor walks on that set and he's not happy, you're not going to get a good performance and the scene's going to suck.
Right.
So
that's
all part of it.
Thinking about your key second ADs, it makes me think about a small business or just a business in general, where you have the business partners. In a sense, they're kind of running the show, and that's what you and your
it's the worst job in film business.
Is which job?
The second AD. Key second AD is the worst job. You all have to do it. I did it.
Right.
I did it for 5 years. It is the worst. When I say you have no life to yourself, you have none. It's rewarding, and it's great to see everything come together, but 3 a.m. in the morning and you're home at 9 p.m. It is obnoxious.
Well, and then when any actor has any problem, who do they go to?
Yeah. How'd you like to be standing in a dark parking lot in the rain and having an actor give you crap, because the light's not on? It's
right.
That kind of. It literally is. It is a tough job, but probably one of the most important jobs on the set, and I think it's the worst.
Talk about once you got into production on Avengers, what were some of the challenges that you faced? What were some of the things that set this apart from any other movie you've done?
Well, having 35 movie stars on a set at the same time, I don't know if that's ever been done before.
How many trailers for that?
There is a famous picture that's on Twitter that we had a base camp that looked, if everyone gets their own trailer, so we had 35 trailers.
Good night.
It looked like a NASCAR race, the infield of a NASCAR race. It's again, it's never been done like that. It's just never been done. They've pieced things together. The end of, for those that haven't seen the movie, the few of you that are out there, the end of the movie, the send-off, so to say, one big shot that comes off a lake and through just about every single Avenger. That's every single one of them was standing there. So when we were prepping the movie in 2016, I believe it was, we basically booked all of those actors by calling their agents and saying, listen, in October of 2018, on the 20th and 21st, you guys are booked. This date will not change, And so we literally booked those people well a year and a half out so that we can, no tricks, no green screen comps, none of it. Every single one that you saw, they were standing there doing it.
That's pretty incredible to think
Amazing.
About that scene that far in advance.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's the culmination of 22 movies, so it's a pivotal. It's one of the more important scenes in all of the Marvel universe. So. And that's just Marvel. I mean, we've done not quite to that extreme, but there are plenty of movies, whether it's Pirates or Jurassic World, any of those type of movies where you have a climax and you need 10 actors at the same time is not always easy. So you have to similar,
right.
Maybe 6 months warning, not a year and a half.
But when you're dealing with an A-list actor, you have these special gloves on, and you just have to work in a certain way. So I can imagine that could exacerbate the problem, right?
You do, but you really, especially the first AD, one of the best parts of my job is I get to know these actors absolutely intimately, and I'm very happy that I call many of them my friends, and I keep in touch with them and play golf and have personal relationships with a lot of them. So you develop trust, and so at the beginning, they want to know that you're doing a good job. They want to know that you're keeping an eye on them. And by the mid part of the movie, they know that you've got their back, and they know if there's anything that you can do to help them. And they'll also come to you with personal problems, and any of that kind of stuff. And you're not always an AD listening to their problems. Sometimes it's a friend listening to them and saying, "Let me see what I can do." So a lot of that kind of works itself out because there's a trusting give and take that comes out of it.
Your job on set is to keep things moving, keep things on time. Did that shoot, the Avengers, ever go behind schedule?
Nope. On time and on the dime, as we say.
Never ever?
No, listen. We hit our schedule. We hit our mark. We hit our budget.
That's amazing.
And that doesn't mean that we didn't have bad days and fell behind on that day, but we'd make it up, whether it's the next day, down the line, whatever it is. the decisions that the directors make. Sometimes I can go to them at 4:00 and say, we're in trouble and we only have 3 hours left and we're not going to make it. And they will either cut shots or figure something out, whatever it's going to be. But as a team, we all found a way to get through. Rather than saying we made every single day, we made every single scene, the way we wanted to. Yeah.
Do you ever find yourself in a position where you're having to go to a producer or somebody else and say, we're not going to make it? What should we do? Or the line producer?
Yeah, I mean, that happens every single movie. We certainly have, like I said, we have days where we say we're just not going to make the day.
Mm-hmm.
And the analogy that a producer told me is you can be the LA Dodgers, be the best team in baseball, and win 10 in a row. All right, and everything's going your way. And on that 11th game, you get blown out 10-0. And it's just not your day. That doesn't mean you're not a bad team. That doesn't mean you did anything wrong. It's just not your day. And that happens in film. So if we have a bad day, we simply take note of what we owe. And I always try to find a way to solve our own problems before we have to take it to a producer. But 9 out of 10 times we can solve our own problems. And the 10th time that we can't, we figure out a creative way, whether it's let's put a second unit on for a day or a splinter unit or that type of thing. We've split a camera off and do a B camera shot, whatever it's going to be. But we always, as a group, figure out a way to do it.
And you're working with so many actors on that movie, you kind of have the luxury where you might be able to do, like you're saying, a second unit, or sometimes
Sure.
if it's a smaller movie, you may not have that option.
I mean, the good and the bad. I said earlier that there were scheduling problems simply because there's so many actors and dealing with their personalities and their personal schedules. The counter to that is sometimes, like I said, you can't help but have people around that aren't working for a period of time. It's just the nature. You can't prioritize everyone. So I might be able, if we run into a problem on set, I may have Anthony Mackie or Sebastian Stan. One of them may be in a hotel and say, get them on out here. Let's pull that scene up from next week. That kind of stuff, and we can figure that kind of stuff. So I don't want to make it sound all bad because there is some flexibility to having that many people.
Well, because it's not an exact science. Some people think it is, but it's so hard to when you're scheduling a movie to know exactly how long everything takes, because it's nobody knows.
Correct.
Right? I mean,
even if you know exactly, first of all, no one knows exactly how long it takes. I don't care what they say. But what happens if someone shows up 20 minutes late? You're already 20 minutes behind. So you never know what the director is going to change. And they want to add shots. They want to take shots away. They want to add a big special effect that's going to take an hour to rig. Or the big special effect that is going to take an hour, they say we no longer need. So it is a constantly evolving, every single day is a constant change and continued reaction to what happens. At the same time, we're very proactive. So as things evolve, I will say, okay, well, does that mean this afternoon we want to change things as well? And we always try to get ahead of things and offer options. So the last thing we want to be is reactionary, 100% of the time.
What was your favorite scene or day shooting on the Avengers? Or do you have a favorite scene?
I do. Could I say?
Oh, spoiler alert! Everybody's seen it, right?
Okay.
Except for the 5 people that haven't.
The funeral. Okay, so the funeral was under such secrecy. We from day one we called it the wedding. Okay,
right.
Figuring everyone knows the relationship between Pepper and Stark. So we called it the wedding. This way we fit all of the actors with suits, and they didn't know any better. So none of the actors knew what was going on. Mm-hmm. They just knew they were coming for a wedding. Sorry. We closed off the set, so crew members, unless you were actually physically working on the camera, you weren't allowed back there. I mean, it was literally as closed and as secret as I said. It was shot on a private ranch about a half an hour outside of Atlanta. All the actors started showing up, and I'm going to guess there were probably 35 of them, and they were all in the front of the house. And I literally sat there with a big smile on my face going, this is one of the coolest things I've ever seen. Mm-hmm. And it's my job to get them in the backyard and get to work. I'm going to use a curse word here. You can bleep it if you want. But I stood on a box and I said, could I have everyone's attention? And I literally had Michael Douglas, Michelle Pfeiffer. I mean, everyone just looking my way. And I said, this is one of the coolest fucking things I've ever seen. Let's go to the back and shoot a movie. That's all I said. And everyone and we literally all Sam Jackson, we all just went to the backyard. And that's a scene that we pre-planned, I say for 18 months, but even the weekend before we brought the camera there, we put marks for everyone. Like there was That was probably the most efficient thing that we shot.
Was that a jib or what was
It's a Technocrane.
A Technocrane, good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember watching that thinking, that's just amazing that you got that many people to...
Yeah.
That were...
highlight of my career.
Right.
Really was.
Give us a challenging scene. What was a scene that you're like pulling your hair out thinking, we're never going to finish this scene? Did it happen?
We started in a hard way because of actor availability. The very first thing we shot on Infinity War was Titan. And we combined franchises right off the bat, and with no rehearsals, unfortunately, because we had to rehearse on the day. So we were combining the Iron Man franchise with the Guardians and Doctor Strange and Spider-Man. So you put all of them together when they all first see each other, and that was very difficult. The set was a little bit treacherous. All the gaps and holes and all the thing that you saw there, that was all real. Mm-hmm. So you have to be careful, even just walking across the set. And I'm the one making announcements, watch yourself, that kind of stuff, and be careful. And I'm the one that ended up falling.
Oh, of course.
And took all the skin off my knee on the second day of shooting. And it hurt. I was limping, and I had to act like a tough guy so that, you can imagine. So that was very difficult.
On day two?
On day two. And
gosh.
having these franchises all come together and create the vibe that was needed for this to excel. It was hard. It was the first few days of putting those kind of franchises together was very difficult.
Do you follow all these movies you work on in terms of understanding all the stories and the arcs and
I'm a geek.
You're a geek?
Yes.
So this franchise fits you where it might not fit,
I
right?
Couldn't be more excited. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I do all the research. Yes.
Well, I mean,
absolutely.
what type of research? Do you read comic books? I mean, what do you...
It's funny. I don't read a lot of comic books, but I do a lot of research on Google. I learned all the characters. I've seen all the movies, how many times. But the thing about the Russos as well is when you sit in their meetings, creatively, anyone that's in the room can have a voice. So there's not the guy sitting in the back taking notes. Someone vacuuming can walk by. That's the extreme case. But if he has an idea and it's the best idea in the room,
right,
we'll shoot that. I mean, it literally is, I don't want to say the smartest person in the room, but best idea wins.
That's good.
Yeah.
So when you are geeking out over this series, were there any stories where you may have made a suggestion to a director about something? Are you allowed to say
I'm
that?
going to say this, okay?
Okay.
It's just, it's only happened once. We were in a very dark room and going through characters, and it's a lot of the Marvel executives, including Kevin Feige, and Red Skull came up, and they were discussing how to use him, put him in the movie, which he ultimately they referred to him as the Stone Keeper, and one of the original thoughts was, well, let's not show his face. Let's just hear the voice, have him with a hood on, and people will wonder for years if that was Red Skull. And in a dark room, I booed. I literally went, boo! And I was sold out immediately. I won't say who, but someone said, hey, Kevin, that's Castaldi booing you, which just doesn't happen because Kevin's a genius, and I would never. There was nothing disrespectful. And they said, what? And I said, I've been waiting for 20 movies to see this guy again. I go, people are going to really want to see it. It's like, give us a shot to see him. We want to know it's him. I don't think you want to play trickery here. And that's not the way we left that meeting. We left it with the Stone Keeper exactly. But when the movie came out, it did come around and they showed people, and that was one of the wow moments of the movie. That people were really, really happy to see that character come back. I would never do that again. I was probably shaking for 3 days after, just waiting for the pink slip to come in. But yeah, that was a moment.
That's pretty crazy.
Yeah.
In a dark room. So, the movie has since come out. Has there been any crazy press stuff that you've had to deal with as a first AD that you normally wouldn't have to with?
No, I don't have to deal with the press, which is great. But I probably have gotten 150 friend requests on Facebook from all over the world for. I don't know if people see the movie, see a credit, and then say, I'm going to friend. I mean, I got a friend request from Pakistan.
There you go.
I mean, it's like that. That to me is strange. Like, Facebook should be about people that you actually know. But unfortunately, I don't do any press. I don't have to do any interviews. I have nothing to do with it. Just the way I like it.
Love it. So, when you're working on this movie, or like a Marvel movie, how does it compare to just your typical
same process
movie? Is there anything specific though?
It's the same process. You get a script, you break it down, you find the best way to shoot it, you hold endless and countless meetings with all the department heads to put them together, and in the end, you really work hard, and everyone works as a team to not only make the best possible film and support the director, but also cross the finish line together, and you're a family, and the film business, when you're basically an AD as an independent contractor, every 9 months you're looking for a new job,
right?
So you're always working with new people, and you see a lot of familiar faces over time, of course, but you really do kind of it's almost like a military boot camp. You come in, you spend so much time and so much effort with some people, and then it's over. You shake hands, you maybe shed a tear, you have a big party. Hopefully I see you again,
right?
So the process remains the same, though. I approach each film with the same mindset. I do not have a system that I say is my system. I never sit in front of a director and go, well, let me tell you, this is the way I do things. Every film is different. So whether it's a quiet film, it could be a film shot in I did some of the Bourne Legacy in the Philippines, and shooting in the Philippines is difficult. And so we had to come up with a whole new system of integrating local people that didn't even speak English. So everything is different, but the approach is very much the same.
You mentioned creative meetings, a second ago, and I just wanted to talk about that. There's so many meetings that happen for a film. Is there anything that you've learned to make these meetings efficient, or do you try to AD them in a certain way?
I don't try to AD the meeting itself. I try to schedule. I usually end up running the schedule of the directors, meaning prioritize. Now, they'll always say, I need to do this and this, and fair enough. But as far as costume needs 20 minutes, you always try to just put the most important stuff, or what you feel is the most important stuff and you feel is the most time-sensitive stuff up front. And I try to put specific times, beginning and ends, because there's always a few people that just can talk for 2 hours. And when they walk in a room, I say, you got 20 minutes. That's all you get. And then the next person's walking in the room. So that pushes them, to be a little more businesslike, ask their questions, finish up, and get out of the way, because there's someone else behind them with, just as many questions.
That's very interesting. Going back to being on set, is there anything that you've learned over the years to keep things moving amidst chaos?
Yes.
I mean, I know there's never chaos, but...
No, I'll say this. I feel the most important thing that can happen on set for me is relationships.
Right.
Okay, not just with the actors, but with each and every crew member, department heads, second, thirds, fourths. It doesn't matter. I feel you get to know everybody personally. You get to know their names. You deal with everyone as a human being. No stupid questions, meaning anyone can ask me anything. I don't even care what it sounds like. I've asked plenty of stupid questions. And you really make it a family-friendly environment so that everybody feels they have a voice. The other thing, too, is if you keep everyone informed, even a little change, like this is going to be a 10-minute delay. We're going to probably shoot an hour late tonight. Whatever it is, if people feel, the more they feel involved and the more they feel a part of the process, the harder they work and the easier they adapt to changes. And when they see the directors working hard and they see people in other departments working hard, they tag right along and they work just as hard as they do. So keeping that spirit, it's really about, I could be a cheerleader sometimes, whether it's funny jokes, whatever it's going to be, whatever it takes to keep the spirit high, that's what I do. And I constantly involve as many people as I can so that they feel a part of the process. And they absolutely are.
Talk about building some of these relationships. Is there anything specific? Is it eating lunch with different people?
I'm an AD, so I eat lunch standing up.
You eat lunch standing up. You don't eat lunch.
No, the truth is, especially the last 5 years, we don't break for lunch anymore. We used to do long 15, 16-hour days and break for lunch for 45 minutes. Now, especially on the Marvel movies, on Pirates, on Maleficent, like we simply don't break. We try to shoot a 10 or 11 hour continuous day and be done and have people go home and have dinner with their family. So in a typical day, if I had 15 superheroes in spandex, if I were to break for lunch, they get out of their costume, then they go eat, then they have to put it back on, go into touch-ups. You're down 2 hours.
All that momentum is gone.
It's gone.
Yeah.
It's gone. And the first, shot when you come back is, sluggish. So yeah, I'm very much a fan of a more efficient, continuous day, French hours they call it. But,
right.
So we don't do the lunch thing anymore. But no. But the thing too is. My official call time is when it's crew call. So if it's a 7 a.m. crew call, my call time is 7 a.m. I'm probably there at 5:30. So I don't think I'm a typical first AD. Was a typical first AD. I'm always there. I make it a point so people see me. That I'm visible. They can ask me a question 2 hours ahead. If I'm eating something and they walk up and say, "I'm sorry, I'll wait," I immediately put it down and say, "No, go ahead." And just prioritize people.
Very cool. Over the years, working as an AD, you're put in that leadership capacity.
Yep.
Are there any things you've read or learned from other people about this, about leadership, or about?
Nothing I've read. Nothing really prepares you for working on a set.
Mm-hmm.
And I include classes and college alike. Your boot camp is your first job.
Right.
I believe that. I would say that from all the people, when you're coming up from a PA to a second, whatever it's going to be, you're always watching your boss and you're watching the ADs above you and you're watching the directors and how they behave and maintain themselves. And I will say that I have learned a lot from a lot of people, but I also say that I've learned a lot of what not to do. And I think the learning lessons, and this I tell PAs when we hire them, I say you're going to learn an awful lot about what you want to do and how to do it, and you're also going to learn what not to do. And I make it a point when I see, I'll say that some of the ADs I've worked for do something that I didn't quite agree with, I have to support them, but I, keep it in my bank and say when I'm a first AD, I'll never behave like that, or I won't do that kind of thing. And I think that's kind of molded me. So I'm kind of an amalgamation of all the people that I've worked for. At the same time, finding my own way and developing my own relationships and truly taking advantage of opportunities that have been presented in front of me. I realize, and my advice to some people is, you may only get one crack at it. So if you are given an opportunity to work on a big film or any film that you really want to, run, hustle, think, be smart. It's just that opportunity may never ever come again.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I think if you maintain a moral center, I'm just a big believer in treat people how you want to be treated, and it all comes back. It really, I'm a big believer in karma as well. So you put it all together and you take the good with the bad, filter out the bad, and that's what you end up with.
Yeah, I mean, you're on set for how many hours? 11 to 15 hours
on your feet,
and you're with a bunch of people that are there for a year with you. You don't want to treat people badly, right? So
of course, well, of course. So no, you never ever. And if they're, and listen, when you're on any of these movies for 9 months at a time, there's always going to be some arguments, and there's always going to be some bad feelings. You just try to get into it and fix it immediately, and just get rid of it. And if it's something that is too public, you take them and go on another set or walk off the stage or whatever it's going to be, and you calm it down as quick as you can. We ADs especially, and this gets, some ADs unfortunately don't realize this. Our job is to put fires out. Our job is to calm people down. Okay, we don't throw gasoline on things. So if there is bad weather coming in, someone will eventually come up to me and go, "This is ridiculous. Why are we still here? I'm freaking out. There's a thunderstorm coming." And I say, "Calm down. We're watching the weather service. We have a lightning monitor. If it gets close, I promise you we're out of here." Simple, But it's those type of things that we just, as long as we are calm and people see that we're calm, it kind of rubs off on other people.
I think from my own experience, being calm is one of those things that I learned early on, that I can either, like you said, throw gas on it, and
never ends well.
But it just won't go well, or
Yeah.
I can just take a different approach,
Yes.
right, and just say, let's talk about this over here and let's figure out a solution. So I'm going to nerd out real quick and talk about if there's any tools, software, or apps that you use as an AD.
No.
No? Nothing?
No, I mean, Movie Magic is the software.
Okay.
That's pretty standard across the board. Starting to get into Movie Magic budgeting,
right.
Scheduling and budgeting. That's it. There's no I mean, yes, I guess you could say there's a few clever. There's Weatherbug, and there's a few of those. There's an app that you point your phone up to the sky, and it tells you where the planes are. So, do
you know what app that is?
I'd have to look. It's literally something like flight something.
Oh, okay.
But it's literally so when you're shooting and you're like, God, there's a lot of planes today. You can just see where you can see where the planes are going. But no, there's really not, other than the weather, which usually the second AD is all over the weather. There's really not. It's a very human job, which is great. I can't say it enough. It's all about relationships and constant communication with people, and you don't need the technology of your phone, which is great. And half the movies don't let you carry a phone anymore.
But do you take anything with you? Take a gold fold or a iPad or anything?
Used to, not anymore.
It's all in your head?
Most of it is. I mean, I always have a copy of the schedule on me. I always have a contact list, but and my script. But that's it. I was always amazed coming up the chain, how much my bosses knew, and I realized that the AD maybe is the only other one, except for the director, that has read that script 50 times, 60 times.
Right.
You're also inputting everything into the computer,
mm-hmm.
so. When someone walks up and says, hey, that scene where Billy walks, and you're like, yeah, that's scene 40. And they look at you like, how the hell do you know that kind of? It's because you've gone through it in your head so many times. You've typed it, you've revised it, you've read it. And nobody else just has that kind of exposure to the script. I mean, Avengers, I was one of 5 people that actually had a physical hard copy of the script for obvious reasons. And that's how you just, it's repetitive, it almost becomes a muscle memory.
So now you're doing lots of different things. You're working in a producing capacity on different projects. What is that like, and what's next?
I just started this year. I finished shooting Maleficent 2 in London and met wonderful producer Joe Roth and Jeff Kirschenbaum. And they offered me a position to join their company and become a producer and oversee their film slate. So I've been working with them since January 2nd. And it's interesting. It's you're into the development of a project and putting a project together and getting ready to do a big pitch to a studio to get the project formally greenlit, and writers' meetings and directors' meetings all in the early stages is a lot of fun. So it's I learn something new every day.
Do you have any last thoughts for our listeners about anything or just working in general as a first AD on a big budget movie?
I do, and I wouldn't even say this is a big budget thing. I would say anyone that's looking to succeed in the business, opportunities are absolutely everywhere. And the slightest opportunity that you may not even think it's an opportunity, but every person you cross is a potential job in the future. Every movie that you work on is a potential job down the line. And I'll give an example of that is I was doing a second unit on the Bourne Legacy that I mentioned earlier in the Philippines. Very, very difficult. It was the whole motorcycle chase with Renner. And it was we had to set up all that traffic. No one spoke English. Very, very hard. And at the end of it, a wonderful producer, his name is Pat Crowley. He works with Frank Marshall and the whole Spielberg camp once upon a time. He came to me and he said, boy, I got to tell you, he goes, I don't know how you pulled it off. That was absolutely fantastic. Next year I'm going to be doing Jurassic World. He says, I can't promise you anything, but I'm going to choose 3 or 4 ADs and put them in the room, and I'm going to make you one of the ADs.
Oh, wow.
So it gets you in the door. So a lot of people go, as a second unit in the Far East, but, took that opportunity, worked my ass off, made an impression enough for him to say, I'm going to put you in the room for this other movie. You still have to, have a good interview, and you still have to be confident, that type of thing. But had I literally just approached that job in a haphazard kind of way, I wouldn't have gotten Jurassic World, and that wouldn't have translated into Tomorrowland, and you name it. It just, it's
right.
it's a whole landslide of things. Everything feeds on, and it's the film community, not just in Los Angeles, in the world. The film community is so small, and people think that it's this wide range of tens of thousands of it. It is so small. Your reputation and your name is so important, and I'm surprised each day to realize that people know what's going on. They hear what's going on. People I haven't seen. I just saw someone today that I haven't seen in 10 years, and he knew everything that was going on in my life. So no, I really, every job, every day is an opportunity to make an impression on someone. You just never know where that next job is going to come.
How can people follow you if you want them to follow you? Are you on social media?
I try not to be. My wife is telling me to get on Instagram. I'm not even on Instagram yet, but I think I'm going to. I am not on Twitter. I am on Facebook only. And but again, if I don't know you, chances are I'm not going to friend you. I just take I tend to take a more personal approach to that kind of thing. But I think I will get on Instagram, and I have so many. I occasionally put a block of film photos together, and that seems to be a popular thing. So I think at some point I will get on Instagram. Otherwise, you'll just have to track me down through the DGA directory and dig me up that way, I'm afraid.
I mean, if you get on Instagram, you're going to have to post some of these behind-the-scene pictures from
it's on Facebook.
Avengers or something.
Oh, it's all on
Facebook. Oh, it's on Facebook. Gotcha.
Not public, though, I'm afraid.
Right.
Yeah. Yes.
Thanks so much, Chris. Really enjoyed it.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
If you enjoyed this episode, please visit us on iTunes, leave a review, and share with your network. You can also visit us online at assistantdirecting.com. Sign up for our e-newsletter to stay connected to what we're doing. Thanks, guys.